Hello, I'm Scott Brady with Overland Journal and Expedition Portal, and I have to say I'm out here with one of the most exciting Grand Cherokees we have seen in a very long time. Funny enough, one of my earliest Overland vehicles was actually a Grand Cherokee. I actually had several of them. I had a 1993 model and then a 1996 model. And although they were quite capable off-road, they weren't always the best of vehicles, but that has definitely changed in recent decades with the evolution of the Grand Cherokee models. But this is really the most capable, most technologically advanced, and one of the quickest Grand Cherokees ever produced. This is the 2023 Trailhawk 4xe. So it uses a combination of a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder and an electric motor to provide over 400 horsepower and 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds.
We're on a beautiful trail right now in the Sonoran Desert north of Phoenix, and this is a perfect environment to test this Grand Cherokee. It's actually one of the most beautiful floral blooms I have seen in my almost 25 years in the state. And it's just really a great vehicle to drive this kind of an off-road trail in. So this is a 6 out of 10 scale, which is starting to become a little bit more challenging. It requires more ground clearance, which you can achieve with this vehicle by just selecting a higher suspension mode with the air suspension. And then you can actually go into off-road too, which gives a significant amount of clearance, but you really only want to use it just for getting up and over a specific obstacle. You don't want to drive around in that mode because it's quite harsh. But in off-road mode 1, you've got nearly 11 inches of ground clearance, plenty of clearance to get over most obstacles. And then you've also got the ability to disconnect the front sway bar, which is a first in the Grand Cherokees, and it makes a huge difference on the trail. It really reduces head toss, provides a lot better cross-axle articulation, and because it's independent front and rear, you need all the articulation you can get, and this is a great solution to that challenge. And then another thing that you normally need for a 6 out of 10 scale trail is you need some kind of a traction device or really effective traction control system. This has both. So this has an active center locking differential, which when you're in rock mode, like I'm going to select now as we start to go up this climb, it's going to more actively engage the center differential lock. And then it also has a rear locking differential, active rear locking differential. So because it's electronically controlled, depending on wheel spin, it can activate that rear locker. Now in rock mode, it's going to be more preemptive in engaging the rear locker. So it's going to engage it sooner, even in just a fraction of a rotation of one of the rear wheels different than the other. So another thing that you need on a trail like this is good clearance. So in your off-road 2 mode, you're going to have 36 degrees of approach angle. You're going to have 22 degrees, just over 22 degrees of breakover, and then you're going to have about 30 degrees of departure. So these are really impressive numbers in a Grand Cherokee of any vintage, but it's also a significant number for any SUV in the segment. In fact, there are very few SUVs that are as capable as this Trailhawk Grand Cherokee outside of their own lineup, which would include the Wrangler. So you're going to have to get into Broncos and Wranglers and other really high clearance vehicles in order to get these kinds of numbers and this degree of capability right out of the box. So as an overland vehicle, Grand Cherokees have always been a great choice. They have a lot of interior space, very comfortable vehicles to drive the long distances before you get to the trail. And they've always had good off-highway capabilities because they are a Jeep. But this is one of the best overland vehicles from Jeep in quite some time because of the entire breadth of capability. I also love the fact that you can just go into all-electric mode and then the vehicle falls silent on the trail. When I was driving it, pulling an Escapade Topo 2 trailer the other day, I had it in all electric, and we were surrounded by quail. The quail weren't spooked by us at all. They were kind of moving along the vehicle, in front of the vehicle. And I've experienced that with other EVs. So if you want to go into full quiet mode with this Grand Cherokee, you can do that. You can have the vehicle go all electric, and then it still benefits from the fact that it has a torque converter, low range, and an 8-speed automatic. So you don't get any of those downsides of electric vehicles in the fact that it has the ability to go up and over large rocks and ledges even in all electric mode. The one downside of the vehicle from an Overland perspective is the payload. Because this is such a heavily featured vehicle, and because it is a 4xe, it weighs about 500 pounds more than a standard Grand Cherokee. And as a result, you go from that 1,600 pound payload capacity you would find on a Grand Cherokee down to just over 1,000 pounds. So you have to be mindful of the things that you're bringing with you. It does have good dynamic load carrying capacity on the roof, so you can actually have up to 150 pound roof tent under dynamic loads on the top of the vehicle, or a fairly heavy roof rack load limit. But you do have to watch putting a front bumper, winch, a bunch of additional accessories, rock rails, and then loading it up with too much equipment, because you've only got about 1,050 pounds to work with.
Let's go through my conclusions on this 2023 Grand Cherokee 4xe Trailhawk. It is without question one of the most capable Grand Cherokees that we've ever tested. Even those very early models that had solid front and rear axles, they did not have this kind of traction control system. This has a capable rear locking differential, center locking differential, sway bar disconnect, 30.5-inch tall tire, all-terrain, and adjustable height suspension. In the highest modes, you're getting over 11 inches of ground clearance. You're getting over 35-degree approach angle. Again, that rear locking differential. There's these features of this Grand Cherokee that make it extremely capable. So we're looking at one of the most broadly capable Grand Cherokees ever produced, in the fact that you can drive it every day on electric mode while you're doing your errands up to 30 miles. I was just plugging it in at night and then driving around town and not using any fuel at all. But then you still have over 500 miles of range if you combine the electric and the gasoline power. I'm getting almost 30 miles to the gallon around town in hybrid mode. But then we come out on a trail like this with large rocks, big shelves, significant breakover angle challenges, and this has plenty of traction, plenty of stability, plenty of articulation because of the front sway bar disconnect system. Overall, this is a very impressive Grand Cherokee. When it comes to things that I could be a little more critical about, one of the challenges with the air suspension is when you get it into the higher modes, it really does ride a lot rougher. I find myself wanting to drop it down to normal or just off-road 1 for the trail. So you're really only going to use off-road 1 or off-road 2 on the more significant obstacles. So just be aware that ride quality and articulation suffers at the higher suspension heights. The other thing to take into consideration is because this is such a heavily appointed vehicle, it only has about 1,050 pounds of payload. So you combine the battery weight, the additional drivetrain components, the weight of the larger diameter tires and all of the off-road accessories, skid plates, etc. This is such a heavily appointed vehicle that it actually does come in at being heavy, which means that you've only got 1,050 pounds of payload. That's been one of the great things about the Grand Cherokees of the past, is that they would have 1,800 pounds, 1,700 pounds, even 2,000 pounds of payload. So you don't quite have that on this vehicle, so you need to be pretty mindful of the weight that you're going to add to this truck.